The following podcast is brought to you by Cast Content Media.
Hey guys, it's Ron Worley, your most imperfect host of Sons of Ditches. People are liars, thieves, addicts, and assholes. Some people change, and a few make a difference. But everyone has a story. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Sons of Ditches. Man, this is going to be a fun one today. This week's guest is a really good friend of mine. Actually, we were really good friends in 1991 and then lost track of each other 30 years ago. My friend Kristina, we're doing first names only today because she's got a great story and we're going to hear that great story, but she needs to remain anonymous a little bit. So Kristina, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Well, I'll like Ron said, we grew up in the same small little town, and there wasn't a lot of trouble to get into out here. And I still live in that small town that we were from. But I guess I'll back up a little bit of my upbringing. I was raised by two really great parents.
We froze.
Oh, we froze.
Oh,
are better?
There you are.
Okay.
Yeah, now we're better. Okay.
So I was raised by these really two great parents who, the oil boom hit up here in Alaska, and my family was from Louisiana, and so that's an oil industry state. And so in the early part of my life, we moved up here to Alaska for my father to go for an oil industry job, which has brought us to Alaska. And then
up on the North Slope.
And yeah, on the North Slope. And so coming from a super poor background, my father lived in poverty and my grandparents lived in poverty. And then they came up here and he made quite a great living and worked for British Petroleum for 20 years. And so it was a great a great leap from a lower income community in the southern states. And so he saw more of the world than anyone that, some of his friends, he retired and moved back there. But then we come up here and we have, a father that works on the slope week on, week off.
Right.
He's gone half the time, a mother that works full time. And then you got a kid that's an only child who is allowed to just kind of run amok. Pretty much.
I remember that about you.
Get into a lot of trouble and go to lots of parties, and there was just a lot of outside things to do. We had riverbed parties, and I never thought that it was like a problem. And I got into drugs and alcohol pretty bad in my youth, and I wasn't supervised very much, so there was a lot of raising of myself because my parents were very career oriented and weren't really around. But I thought it was normal. I mean, because everybody that I knew or that I was hanging out with was doing exactly all the same stuff.
We were all partying back then. That was the
partying
thing.
our little butts off. As long as you could keep those grades up and keep the picture on the outside look really, really good, and nobody knew what was behind the curtain, and you could, get away with as much as you could, and then try to do it in other towns in which you don't go to school in, so that when you went to school on Monday, you didn't have to hang your head in shame.
Right.
And then I didn't really have many consequences. My dad being pretty well off. I mean, upper middle class, I'd say, is what he climbed to, from poverty to upper middle class. Anytime I got in trouble, he would bail me out and cover it up and sweep it under the rug. And then, I had multiple car accidents by the time I graduated high school. Ron probably is getting a little glimpse of what he didn't even know was going on in my life.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, I didn't know that actually, but I can see we both had severe car accidents in our lives. This is sort of how, our lives emulated each other in this capacity, because it was just inevitable that something bad was going to happen.
Something bad was going to happen. It was just like that. I can remember in my youth, like I would get this internal feeling like something bad is going to happen tonight, but I'm going to go do it anyway.
Yeah. Right.
I'm going to go anyway. I'm just going to push through. It can't be that bad. And so when we were seniors in high school, it was right after, it was a couple days after our last day of school, and I got my first DUI.
No kidding.
Yeah, I got so that was one, and I mean, 30 minutes is not long enough to tell you all the consequences of, that was the start. And so
Right.
it didn't really get any better from there. And then I left for college to Montana State University because I figured that this small little town was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it was causing all of my problems. And so I must get away from here and start over somewhere else. And then, and it didn't,
Problems followed you.
Yeah, because wherever I go, there I am.
Right.
The problem isn't everybody else. It was really me and my choices. And so I took my legal consequences down there with me. I followed all the requirements that the court said, all that kind of stuff. And then, and did okay. But it was my first attempt at trying to be good. And it lasted, only a few weeks before I had a fake ID. And I was just, there's lots of fraternities and sororities and the whole college life. And,
right.
And I went there for a couple years, and then my grades weren't that great. So I came back to Alaska, and I went to work for the same company that my dad had worked for, which was BP. And I worked there for a couple years.
Okay.
And then I went back to college. Well, right around the time when I went back to college was the first time that I actually got sober. So I got sober when I was 22.
Okay.
And I was, and then I got very successful. I got straight A's in college. I was very successful, graduated with honors. It's funny, like those of us that have this history of alcoholism or addiction, when we throw ourselves into our life without that interruption, we become very successful. We're very driven.
It's so true. Very, very true.
And I don't know if I was like doing school alcoholically or if I was doing job alcoholically, but I became a teacher, and a very successful teacher in a school district up here in Alaska. And I taught for a long time. And then, I wasn't doing all of the things that helped me to get cleaned up before. I wasn't giving back the way that I was. And then eventually I started drinking and using again.
Oh my.
And
so how long were you sober before you started drinking?
Right around 6 years.
Holy cow.
So yeah.
That's a long time.
It is. It was.
How did that feel the first time? Was it the drugs or was it the alcohol first?
I could put down the drugs pretty easy. It was.
So when you broke sobriety, you went to drugs first, like you smoked some weed?
Well, I went to a psychiatrist.
Oh.
And so I told them all my problems and my symptoms, and so they
Got some pills.
They treated my symptoms, which is really the symptoms of alcoholism and drug addiction and not having a solution. But a psychiatrist can only help you when you're willing to tell them the truth about and they didn't have the whole truth. So that's how it started, was through some prescription medications. And then, within 6 months, that's not enough. That won't fix my ailment. That won't fix what goes on between my ears. And then I'm in a restaurant and the waiter asks and I have a drink, and then we're off to the races. It's just like it never stopped.
The most guilty drink you've ever drank in your life.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow,
yep.
Man.
Yep.
So
and
hard.
then I really only, from that point, I really only drank for about 2.5 more years. And but in those 2.5 years, I managed to somewhere in there at the very tail end of that, in a mild blackout, I wrote a letter of resignation from my teaching position.
Oh,
and,
no kidding.
And I resigned from teaching. I sold my home. I ended up getting a divorce from that first husband, and I lost custody of my oldest son. And yeah, it was pretty fast. It went really, really fast. And then I was, into a new relationship and of all those unhealthy natures. And So because we don't have a whole lot of time, I mean, I won't go into super detail, but it doesn't, for women, it's a lot faster. You know,
Oh,
or what I've learned in recovery is like women go down a lot faster. It doesn't take us as long to hit our bottom.
why do you suppose that is?
I don't know. I'm not a medical expert, but it's just what I've seen. But
Do you think your bottom maybe is a little higher than for men?
no, I don't think it's any higher.
Oh, okay.
I still
I'm
hit the
just
same
curious.
bottom as you, but I just hit it a lot faster. It's like strapping a few cinder blocks to my waistline and then, jumping in a lake. Um,
Okay.
and then, and then for like 6 years, I was not employed.
Oh,
I
wow.
was in a relationship, and I have a younger son who now is 13 years old. He's fabulous. My oldest son is 21 and in college at Northern Arizona University. And but it's what my life looks like today is not what it looked like years ago when I attempted to kind of clean up my life. And so, leaving that relationship with my youngest son's dad was kind of a leap of faith. Of
Yeah.
um, I didn't. It like some people say like they were homeless before they got sober. Like I became homeless in sobriety. Like
Oh,
I
wow.
had to take that leap and stay in my car for a couple nights, go couch surf at a friend's house until I could, get a job. And then slowly I was working at a health club because I have a background in physical education. So I had like this $9 an hour job.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a job at a investment firm, just answering phones. And I had this custody case going on and all these legal battles and all these consequences of my history. And so I had all of this at the same time. And I don't know, there was a lot of leaning on spirituality to kind of get
Yeah.
me through those years. But the first few years were pretty tough because financially it was really a struggle. And I,
Mm-hmm.
I went back to school. I got my Series 7 securities license. I got my Series 66, which is a stockbroker and registered investment advisor. And I had no history in this type of profession. Like we're talking physical education to finance. That's a
Right.
big shift from bouncing a basketball and shooting some baskets and
Yeah.
going into financial planning.
Yeah.
And
For
then
real.
now I've been working for my CFP, so I'm about halfway through those courses. But
Very cool.
what's going from like walking in the door of that profession and not really knowing anything about it, I really wasn't paying attention to really what I was doing. I was just doing whatever the next indicated thing was on studying and going to school and visitations with my kids. And that oldest boy of mine, I made a phone call every Saturday and Sunday for 10 years,
Oh,
and no
wow.
one ever picked up the phone.
What?
And I still made that call every Saturday and Sunday, and the universe knew. The universe was
Yeah.
paying attention, and then I look at why things happened. So that job turned into a career, not just a job, and
Mm-hmm.
really, I don't know what it was. I don't know, about 6 or 7 years into that career, like we moved to another firm, and and then there was some definite uptick in income. And then my youngest son and we happened to be in the grocery store, and that oldest son of mine approached us in the grocery store
Oh, wow.
and said, someone told me that that Papa or you might be able to help me with college. And
Oh, my
so
gosh.
that opened the door of that relationship. Was
Good for you.
I had dug myself out of that hole, or the universe had, whatever
Yeah.
you want to look at it, to get me to a financial circumstance and financial situation that the one question that he had of me after 12 years of zero contact to ask me a question and that my answer could be yes, that I'd be
Yeah.
honored to help you with college.
So first of all, I'm sorry that you went through that, because I don't, there's nothing aside from a child's death. There is nothing worse than not being able to see a child that's out in the world.
Yeah,
And so,
it was pretty excruciating for
and
the
that was
first
probably some of your drinking issue, like
Yes. Yeah.
the pain.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
So it didn't happen right off. And so the first, I'll back up even a little bit more. So in, that couple, that married couple, my parents, coming from that small little town in Louisiana, and then they moved me up here when I was 7 months old. And when I was about 7 years sober, my mom calls me up. And I don't know about anybody else, but I do a lot of prayer and a lot of meditation, and I stay pretty centered in my spirituality. And then, I don't know, I just was getting these really weird dreams, and when my mom called, there's this instant panic in my chest, and I was so afraid that she was going to tell me that my dad died. That's this feeling and these dreams that I kept getting. And so when I answered the phone, she was in absolute hysterics on the phone. This was April of 2016.
Okay.
And she says, I get her calmed down so she can actually talk. And I said, whatever it is, it's going to be okay. We'll be okay, whatever it is. And she says, Ben's not your dad.
Oh.
And I was like,
what?
And
you're shitting.
No, I'm not. So all I could say, because I've done a lot of work on myself, is, Mother, I love you so much, and I love you, and nothing is going to change that. But I need to get off the phone right now. I promise you that I will call you tomorrow, but I have got to get off the phone right now. But I will call you tomorrow. I'll call you at 10 a.m. on the dot. So just be ready, and I'll call you at 10 a.m. And so I got off the phone, and I'm in complete shock, because I have nothing has ever even, there was nothing in my history to make me think that would be the case. That my father that raised me my entire life, who's on my birth certificate, was not my dad. And I'm just complete disbelief. And so I
who the hell's your dad?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So before my parents brought me up here, about 5 years prior to that, they lived in Alaska. They had come up here when the pipeline had started, and they lived up here, and that's how my dad got into the industry. And then when the big boom was over, they went back down to Louisiana, and my father went back to school. And I will always, when I refer to my father, it's Ben, the person who raised me. He's still my dad. He'll always be my dad. There's nothing changed. It didn't change anything. But when they went back down for my father to go back to school, this is two small town people who got exposure to the great life in Alaska and the possibilities of what could come in the future, and a lot of ego. My dad got a lot of ego, and so and he'll admit this to this day to my face, that he was not a good husband, that he didn't treat my mom very well, and when they went back to Louisiana, they both were cheating on each other, and he didn't really know that he was leaving her at home and going out and doing all sorts of things. And then my mother's high school sweetheart, that she was her boyfriend all through parts of elementary school, junior high, and high school, sought her out, and they had an affair.
Wow.
And that is my biological father. Well, jumping way forward to the phone call with my mother in 2016, she was calling me because she was very well aware that this gentleman, his name is William, was aware of me and always knew that I existed. And most of my life, I don't know when Beautiful by Estee Lauder came out, but I don't remember when. It was for a long time. So for every Christmas, I would get a package of Estee Lauder perfume, and I mean, it's not cheap perfume, but and I just always assumed that it was from my mom. That was a gift that this man William was sending me every single year, and it was his one way to be able to touch my life. And so I come from a place now that I'm a woman who was cut out of her son's life. And then now I have the knowledge of a mother who cut a man out of his daughter's life.
Right.
And so now you have two people trying to be in this relationship and loving relationship with one another that we have completely different perceptions of the circumstance.
Right.
Because I come from a place where William came from.
Right.
And she comes from a place where my ex-husband comes from. And so it was anytime that she would want to talk about it, I would say, this is probably, it would be in both of our best interests for us not to talk about this.
Wow.
And then we can communicate when necessary about it. But anyway, it turns out that I was that man's only child.
Oh, you're kidding me.
And he died. And that's why my mother was calling me, was to tell me that he had died and that most likely there's a will. Like he was a land developer and built residential neighborhoods and things like that. And he had rental properties. And when I talked to her, and she said, I always thought I had more time. I always thought I had more time. And her biggest fear was that it would destroy mine and her relationship because I was so close with my dad that raised me. Like growing up here in Alaska and him me being an only child, I think I discovered I was a girl, like finally, like by 8th grade. 'Cause, there was lots of fishing and hunting and camping and all that stuff. And he didn't treat me like a little girl. Like it was, pack your stuff, get your crap together. We're going, let's go. Right. And then we'd literally go camping on some fishing bank for, a week at a time when he was home from the slope. So we were pretty inseparable all my growing up. And then,
wow.
But in 2016, so what that looked like, and people like now, some people who don't really know me or like know the history, then they look at my finances and they're like, oh, she just inherited this stuff. Well, no, I didn't just inherit this stuff. It was hopping on a plane, leaving work on like a Tuesday night, getting on a plane, flying down to Louisiana all night long to show up to a court hearing at like 9 a.m. the following morning, to stand in court and be called illegitimate for like half an hour. And then because I was in a legal battle pretty much with his siblings that he was estranged from. So for 3.5 years, we were in the Louisiana courts, and we lost at the level 1 court, and then we lost at level 2 court, and then we took it to the Supreme Court, and we overturned that decision because they were trying to use a child support law to prevent me from gaining access in a succession, which are not able to do, but we took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and then we went back to the circuit court, or whatever you call it. Louisiana, just so you know, is the only state in the USA that is run by French law. They have a completely different legal system than any other state in the union. And even when I would approach my attorney friends up here, they're like, well, what state? And I'd say Louisiana, and they're like, oh no, I'm not having, I don't want anything to do with that. And so it was a lot of years in that. And then once it was overturned, then it's been one of his siblings, who was the administratrix, they didn't do any taxes or anything like that throughout that whole time. So literally it's so weird, because when I was signing all the paperwork at my CPA's office, because I went back and I said, okay, we need to do the 2016 taxes to file taxes for his year of death, and then 17 and 18 and 19. And then finally I had to file for an extension for my 2020 because I had to do all the transition and then disperse the estate to myself in that year. So anyway, she called me and she goes, okay, I've got everything ready. And I can tell you this, I learned more about cattle and horses and farming than I ever wanted to know.
Sure.
Because I had to research the price of cattle and find out.
Because he had a bunch of cattle.
Yeah. And which were sold right after his death. So I had to research the cost of cattle, what cattle he had. I had to speak to all the neighbors that lived around the farm because his siblings wouldn't share any information with me. So it's a lot of research. And when we were signing the tax paperwork at my CPA's office, I said, do you know what today is? And she's like, no. And she's been doing all the paperwork for me mainly. I've been doing all the research and fielding it to her.
Yeah.
And she says, well, it's October 27th. And I said, yeah. I said, that's William's birthday.
Oh,
I know. It was like so weird. We
that's
were sitting
bizarre.
there filling out the paperwork. And so it was, on his birthday was the day that we were able to sign all the tax documents and get everything filed to clean up his estate.
Wow.
So that was a lot of years.
Yeah.
And then I'm 16 all the way to 2021. So it wasn't like you just got everything handed over.
Yeah.
No.
And besides that, shit. Yeah. What a way to get it. You never
Yeah,
got to meet the man either.
I never did.
Yeah.
Through meeting his neighbors and having to do all that research, I got to know the man he was.
Mhm.
And a lot of my personal story, it gave it some light.
Oh.
So it's definitely a genetically inherited
Ah.
condition.
He was a drinker.
Yeah. So I did not, so lots of, I got a lot of new information, but because I had my education changed to in the financial realm, it was very, very helpful because this is the stuff that I help clients with, of like cleaning up estates and financial
Right.
planning around it, the transition of wealth and those kind of things. But this coming April will be like 13 years that I have not had anything that affects me from the neck up. And
That's pretty good. 13
yeah,
years.
that's pretty good.
That's awesome, man. And so, and you're very successful now. I could even tell just, so I read something today and it reminded me of, because we were going to do this podcast. It said,
Mhm.
you never hear of wealthy people being negative or not investing in something because they were scared, or never stopping trying to make themselves better.
Right.
And it reminded me of you and myself, actually, because when we saw each other over the summer, I instantly could tell you're sober, number one, and number two, you're kicking ass. So, you just present yourself a certain way.
Well, it's I don't know. You don't really look at it the same as people from the outside who see, especially like if I was to meet somebody today, they would not know that, that history or
Right.
that how many times do you fall down before and you get up and you brush yourself off and you just keep going. It was just
But that, I think
a
that
long process.
Well, yeah, and I think your history made you successful today, because you do have to. I mean, think about how many times you just ruined your life and had to get back up and do.
Right.
And so it's so much easier just to not do that stupid stuff and be able to
Well,
just.
I mean, I could get
going.
with all this COVID stuff that happened. I had renters that like, I can't pay my rent. I'm like, well, yeah, but you can buy a side by side and a camp
Right.
trailer, and just because, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's all kind of in the mentality. Like, do you want to be self-sufficient? Do you want to? I don't want to have any regrets.
Right.
I don't want to look back and say I didn't do something just because I was afraid of it, or
That's right.
I didn't. It was easier to take the government check and not work than it was to, get up out of bed and, don't pull the covers over my head and just keep pushing forward. It's been a long time since I had self-pity. I mean, that's usually what it is like somebody feeling sorry for themselves. And, once you've realized it, or stop blaming all the outside forces, and you start taking responsibility that I'm responsible for my own actions, and if I choose not to take the action, the consequences are on me, not on somebody else.
Bingo.
If there's somebody out there that you want what they have in life, do what they do. Like, whatever the profession is. I mean, you can be successful at anything that you set your mind on. I mean, it does need to be something that other people want. Like,
right.
If you're trying to, get into some industry that that no one else is interested in, but you're not really going to make a good living at it.
Right.
So it's, finding those avenues, and everybody needs financial planning. Not
Absolutely.
everybody takes advantage of it, but It's been definitely, it's been interesting. It's a hard topic to learn at the
Yeah.
beginning. I mean, I failed the Series 7 a couple times or a few times before I passed, um, mainly because they make you sit in that tight little room in some cubicle for like 8 hours.
Oh,
Um, and
stressed out, man.
yeah, those kind of testing. I don't know
That's a
what they do for
pressure
real
cooker.
estate, but
Same. You sit in a little
same.
cubicle and pressure, you
The pressure
pressure
cooker,
cook.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just wild. So, oh gosh, I just had a question for you.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So we already talked about this
Mhm.
via text, but tell my listeners what you know about the new stuff out there, the cryptocurrency. I thought it was a brave answer, a good answer.
I don't remember what I even said, to be honest. I'll have to look
so,
back.
so you gave me your opinion on not as a professional.
Not as a professional, but
Yeah,
I don't remember what I said. I'm looking back.
I can remind you.
Oh, hold on.
This is a good place for a commercial.
Oh, was it before you sent me?
Buy my book, everybody. This is the
Yeah.
place where you should have a commercial. Producer, put a commercial here. Okay.
Oh, well, it's still considered high risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's in my own, I can speak for myself as, I'm more of a buy and hold strategy,
Mhm.
like I'm in it for the long game, but, my portfolio's like the 80-20 rule, 80%
Eh,
equity, 20% fixed income. But I'm kind of past that age category. That's
mhm.
more of people that are in their 30s. But I
Right.
come from a place that I come from a place where I came from nothing. Like I
Right.
had something and then I went to below nothing. So I can, if I lost everything, I'd be okay.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
put, everything's not at risk. I have a lot of real estate inherited from that, from William, but it was on that front, real estate wise, like you could tell from his life that it had really gone downhill the last 5 or 10 years for himself, where he didn't take care of things very well. So a
Mm.
lot of years have been fixing those rental properties and getting new roofs put on. And then right when all this was going on, then those two hurricanes hit in the same
Oh,
area. And so there was a lot of repairs to do and getting renters into those. I can tell you that owning rental property in Louisiana is a great place to own rental property because the taxes are
really?
super low taxes. So the property values might not be high, but when you have a renter in there that's paying rent, it's like an investment that you have in your brokerage account that's paying dividends and interest,
Yeah.
and you're using the income. So that has,
Passive income.
yep, it's constant passive income. There's a cell tower in there somewhere too. So
You have a cell tower.
yeah.
That is awesome.
But yeah, but right now there's a university in Louisiana that gets all the proceeds from the lease because he signed a lease agreement with and made a donation to a university. He had been donating to a university all
Oh,
the proceeds from that had been going to a university to pay for scholarships for college students. So
well, at
I
least need to
I
name it
just kept
after
it,
you.
I just kept it going. Yeah,
Yeah.
didn't really
Call
have
it.
a choice. It had to keep going until I think it's like 2025. The lease is up, but
That's
you get
interesting.
you get a charitable contribution, a tax write-off every year.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And so how's that game work? Just curious. Like, so you cell tower, you have one on some property that he gave you or
Yeah.
whatever. And then they rent it the space for the tower from you
So
or
then
the land.
there's agencies that are kind of like the middleman between the cell companies and the landowner. So the cell tower company installs they sign a long-term lease agreement with the landowner, and
Okay.
then they then they own the cell tower. I don't own the cell tower. The cell tower
Right.
is just their piece of machinery that's on the land that they're leasing from me, and then and that then I have a lease agreement with the university that then the proceeds just flow right through. And then at the
Right.
end of the year, I just calculate how much has gone to them and then write it off on taxes as a charitable donation.
That's so awesome. Good for you. Wow, we're all grown up.
Which it doesn't, I know, we're all grown up, which it doesn't really make, so, but then when you have to also, like my CPA gets on to me quite a bit. And I'm not giving any tax advice here. I'm just speaking from
Yeah.
personal experience of, so I like giving, I give money to other organizations, especially when it's related to like stuff that I've experienced in history of being a single woman who was from a history of domestic violence. And so I give a lot of money to Awake and another domestic violence group that provides legal services to those that can't afford it.
Okay.
And so, but my CPA, she's like, so all your expenses that you're like, you want to write off all these expenses for fixing up all these places. She goes, it's like, it goes the minute that you make a donation.
Oh,
So not all of it does, but so
right.
they kind of, it's counterintuitive to, you just have to do it right. So she gave me a little bit better instruction because I really wasn't paying attention to what I was supposed to be doing. I just liked giving back since I had gotten so much,
Yeah,
was to be able to have the ability to give back. So
absolutely.
a percentage of that, those upgrades and changes and fixing up the rental properties kind of gets scratched out from the donation side of things. And I'm
Yeah,
not exactly sure why. I just know that it does from what my
right.
CPA tells me when she slaps my hand and I'm signing my tax documents.
Yeah, but you know what? We have to give back. And I tell you what,
Yeah.
when you were using and you had no money, there was no way for you to give back. And that's why
No, it wasn't.
it's very important that, people understand that making money is not the evil. It's not evil because
No,
there's no way to give if you don't have money. I
no, there isn't.
so giving time is also money, especially for you or
Hmm.
me and my wife. If we give you an hour, that's quite a bit of money. So, these things add up, and giving your time is great and all, but a lot of people have to make a choice. I can give you time or I can give you money. And if you don't have any
I don't
money,
have a
give your
legal
time.
degree, so it's not like I could go out and,
There you go.
represent them in court. So
But what a great cause. And
yeah,
you skipped right over that part. So I get to hashtag woman empowerment on this
yeah.
deal.
Well, it's if there weren't agencies out there doing that for people, I would not be where I am
Mm,
today. Like when I didn't have any resources, um, there's groups up here and then all over the U.S. and then out of Washington D.C. that you can apply for grants, and then if your case gets the attention or has the ability to go change case law or things like that, some of those agencies will be willing to do things pro bono. But then there's also grant opportunities and then grants that
mhm.
are out there to help you to pay for attorney fees, which was what happened for me. I mean, it just was like everything happened at the exact right time, like it was like the perfect storm, because I can tell you that I've worked with and helped a lot of other women after me, to and it hasn't always been available to them,
Yeah.
because it just seems like the timing of them, and they're not like ongoing lifelong grants that are available. It's just, so like for instance, someone like me who's had experience and then I make a donation, and then right at that point there's somebody who also needs legal aid at that same time that I make that charitable contribution, and then they just happen to be at the right place at the right time, which was my story.
Right.
Which was yeah, because without those all that aid at the beginning for like those first couple years, there's no way that I would have made it through. I mean,
Yeah.
when the custody battles alone were you know
Yeah.
triple six-figure costs and expenses
Oh,
over a time period of several multiple years.
that's a lot of money. Uh, I don't know if you've listened, but I had a young lady on my show a couple weeks ago. Her name was Rochelle, and she was a survivor of domestic violence. She's actually still going through it.
Hmm.
She's not with the person anymore, the offender, but she's basically living on peanuts because she has a kid, can't get
Hmm.
out and work, can't because she don't have daycare. I mean, she lives in a in a camper of all places. But her biggest thing was the help trying to get her out of the situation. There was some temporary help, but she needed to move out of state to get away from the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, there very little ongoing help. They were very, she's blonde hair, blue eyes, very, yeah. She just
There's
had a
not
hard
a
time.
lot of, and I mean, there's like very specific qualifications for being able to get the aid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not
The
enough of it
easiest
out
way
there.
to explain it without sounding awful.
Yeah. Right.
Very specific requirements
Right.
for, and they're, yeah.
Yeah. So you're doing a good thing, because a lot more people need to do that. And guys out there listening, understand that this is everywhere. Every state has the same issues. My wife is part of, what's it called? Oh gosh. Dang it. I don't know, but it's a house where women who are being beat can go.
Is it like Claire House, like we have up here?
Yep, just like that. It's
Okay.
called something else, and she's on the board there and is
Mhm.
really involved. But everybody should get out, and this is a problem that people don't know about. I know about it because I'm a bail bondsman. I see how many people beat their wives, their loved ones.
Mhm.
I see the
It
domestic
happens on
violence.
both sides of the relationship, really. I mean, there are men that get abused as well. I mean, it
Yeah, but
happens on both sides, but it's much more prominently on the other just because of, size. But it is happening.
right.
Um,
I'm not going to make the jokes I want to make there, because that's
Yeah.
the reason why they don't talk. But the men that are being abused don't talk about it, because you're not a man if you do.
right.
But yeah, you're right.
But it
You're
does happen on
absolutely
both sides. I mean, I hear it in the recovery realm because there are men that it happens to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You got a kitty up next to you there.
Oh yeah, this is Sabine.
Well, you are doing amazing. I'm so damn proud of you. I have one more question before we get into this closing stuff. But okay, the last time you and I hung out, we went to your house afterwards, and your parents were not home, and that seemed like it was normal. So were they both on the slope?
No, I don't remember. Yeah, it was pretty normal. My mom was probably out trying to find my stepdad who was out drinking, and
Oh,
she was
okay.
probably pulling him out of some bar in the community. That's, I mean,
I
that's
just
looking back on that. Like, I just thought it was, I'd come home from school and there'd be like clothes all over the lawn, and my friend would be with me, like, what's going on? I'm like, it's just whatever, I go in the house, and it was just like a normal,
yeah,
the normal Friday.
right.
But that
Well,
man, my stepdad got sober when we were seniors in high school. And I
oh,
think at that point, if we were seniors at that time, he was actually in the VA facility in Anchorage, getting long-term treatment for,
that's probably where he
come to
was
find
at
out,
then.
it wasn't really alcoholism that was the issue. He had post-traumatic stress disorder from the Vietnam War. And,
Wow.
and from that point on, he stopped drinking or using after he went through that big therapeutic process. And when he was my first year of sobriety, this time going around back in 2009, he passed away in September of '09, and he with
Oh,
19 years of sobriety.
oh my gosh. Well, good for him. But
Yeah.
so Ben died.
No, my stepdad. My parents that raised me got divorced when I was young. So Ben is still alive. He lives down in Louisiana.
Oh, I'm so
My
confused now.
stepdad, okay. When we were kids in elementary school, my parents got divorced.
Okay.
And it was week on, week off with mom and dad. So 1 week with
Okay.
mom, 1 week with dad. And then she met my stepfather.
Okay.
And that would have been the opportunity. I think that she could have totally used that fact that Ben wasn't my dad, and she could have made it really, miserable for him and take his daughter
Yeah.
away. But
Yeah.
she didn't.
Wow.
She very much supported that relationship of me and my dad, Ben,
Wow.
and
That's
was
crazy.
always very encouraging. And that's one thing I've always respected about the two of them,
Mhm.
was that they always communicated on my behalf, They communicated with one another very, very well. And yeah, even when all this stuff happened and my mom in 2016 came out with that new information
Yeah.
to me, the hardest conversation I have ever had to have in my life was getting on an airplane and flying down to Louisiana to sit across the table from my dad that raised me and tell him that he was not my dad.
Oh, he didn't know either?
No.
Oh my gosh.
And so even after that conversation with Ben, so that you guys aren't getting confused, Ben is who raised me.
Right.
He sits me down before I leave, and he says, he calls me Chris still. You guys that I grew up with are really the only ones that called me Chris. I go by Kristina in adulthood. And he says, you don't get to blame your mother for this.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
he said, she gave me a gift that I would have never gotten if she hadn't.
Sure.
Because he doesn't have any others. He was unable to have children.
Oh, wow. Well, good. So it worked out for everybody, really.
It did. And we all had dinner one time throughout the whole court proceedings. And, you know, it was as if it was just another thing that we all got to walk through together. But when I flew down there for all those court hearings, I'd fly in and my dad, Ben, would pick me up and he'd go with me to all the court hearings. He wouldn't go inside the courthouse, but he would wait in the car, and then I'd get in the car. He says, how'd it go? And I'm like, well, they only called me illegitimate 7 times today.
Oh my gosh. That sucks, man.
So I tried to keep it light, you know, I mean, really, nobody died today, you know, like it's
Amen. Yeah. Especially you.
Sometimes keep it just as simple as possible, is that
the
problem is only as big as you make it.
True. How's that go? Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. We can complicate stuff.
Oh yeah, pretty quickly. And usually I go off on these rabbit hole tangents and complicate things when you absolutely can just say, that's their shit and move on.
Yeah.
And you know, and I still do it to this day. I try not to, but I do. So, well, thank you so much for coming on. Now, I want to make sure if you need new clients, how do if somebody wants to get wealthy with you, use you, take care of their retirement, how do they get a hold of you?
They would contact, I can give you my cell phone number, 907-351-6381.
That's the best way to get a hold of her, folks. Yeah. Give her a call if you need some help with your finances. I know for a fact she's really good. And it comes highly recommended by me. Thanks so much for coming on, Kristina. I appreciate it. It's been fun. We went on for an hour almost. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, good stuff, man. I appreciate it very much. And
I'm gonna end this with one item. So there's a woman that I worked with for 10 years, and add her to any of your guys' prayer chains. She was at the end of a 40-year career in the financial industry and on her way to retirement, and was diagnosed with cancer. And she was gone from us within 6 months. And following this we have a funeral to attend at 1:00 and to give her the honor. Her name is Pamela Parker. She's a really great woman, and her family is in a lot of pain right now. They were excited about her retirement, and like literally 4 months after she retired.
So sad. So sad. Well, there you go. We will prayer train it up.
Okay.
All right. Thanks kiddo. Mom. Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to Sons of Ditches. For more information, go to my website, ronworley.com, and my YouTube channel, Sons of Ditches. Facebook, Ron L. Worley, or Instagram at Ronald L. Worley II.